While my daughter and her husband were frantically calling every bank in the city, trying to understand how their $847,000 joint account had been legally emptied in a single afternoon, I was sitting in my new penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, sipping expensive wine, and finally understanding that sometimes the family members who abandon you at a subway station during a medical emergency are about to discover they just left the wrong 73-year-old woman behind. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments, have you ever been abandoned by people who were supposed to protect you, only to discover they had their own selfish reasons for treating you like a burden? Share your story below, because today you're going to learn that sometimes the family members who think a senior citizen is helpless and disposable are about to find out they just underestimated someone with 45 years of banking experience and access to every account they thought they controlled. This story is about the snowy February evening when I realized that my own daughter, the child I'd raised as a single mother after my husband's death, put through law school with every penny I could scrape together, supported through her early career struggles, and helped establish her successful Manhattan law practice, had been systematically treating me like an inconvenient obligation while positioning herself to benefit from my financial expertise without ever showing me basic human respect or consideration. When I discovered that the daughter I'd sacrificed everything for, invested my life savings in, and trusted with my most vulnerable moments, had been quietly treating me like a liability to be managed rather than a mother to be cherished. All while enjoying full access to the joint accounts I'd established to help her build her dream life in New York City. My name is Margaret Rose Brennan, and at 73 years old, I thought I'd found the perfect balance between supporting my daughter's ambitious career while maintaining my own dignity and independence in my cozy Brooklyn apartment just 20 minutes from her Upper East Side law office. For 3 years, this arrangement had seemed like the ideal solution for a widowed mother who wanted to remain close to family while continuing to use her decades of banking expertise to help manage the complex finances that came with her daughter's high-powered legal career. The joint account arrangement had been my daughter Sarah's idea, a practical solution that would allow me to help manage her business expenses, client payments, and investment strategies, while also ensuring I had immediate access to funds for any emergency situations that might arise as I aged. As someone who'd spent 45 years working in commercial banking, rising from teller to senior vice president at Manhattan Trust and Savings, I'd understood exactly how to structure these accounts to provide maximum flexibility while maintaining proper legal protections for both parties. What I hadn't understood was that my daughter, Sarah Catherine Brennan, and her husband, David Richardson Chen, had been viewing my banking expertise and financial contributions not as evidence of my continued value and competence, but as convenient services they could exploit while treating me with the kind of casual disrespect typically reserved for hired help rather than family members. The Brooklyn apartment where I'd been living since Thomas's death had become both my sanctuary and my strategic base of operations, though I hadn't realized the latter until much later. The modest 2-bedroom apartment in Park Slope had been chosen specifically for its proximity to Sarah's Manhattan office and its accessibility to public transportation, allowing me to maintain independence while remaining available to help with the increasingly complex financial management that had become my primary contribution to our family's success. From my kitchen table, surrounded by decades of financial documents, banking regulations, manuals, and investment portfolios, I'd been quietly managing over $1.2 million in various accounts that supported not just my own comfortable retirement, but also the ambitious lifestyle and business operations that had made Sarah and David's rapid ascent in Manhattan's competitive professional circles possible. The path that had led me to that kitchen table, armed with banking expertise that most people spent entire careers trying to develop, had begun 51 years earlier when I'd walked into Manhattan Trust and Savings as a nervous 22-year-old recent graduate of St. John's University, desperate for work that would pay enough to support myself while I figured out what I really wanted to do with my life. Banking in 1973 had been a completely different world from the digital financial services that dominated the industry today. Everything had been done with paper records, face-to-face relationships, and the kind of meticulous attention to detail that had made or broken careers based on a single misplaced decimal point or incorrectly filed document. It had been an industry that rewarded competence, reliability, and the ability to build genuine trust with customers who were entrusting their financial security to institutions they hoped would still exist decades later. Miss Richardson, the branch manager had said during my first interview, banking requires the kind of person who can handle complex financial details while also building relationships with customers who need to trust that their money is being managed properly. Do you think you have the temperament for that kind of responsibility? My answer had been immediate and confident. Sir, my father worked in construction for 30 years and never missed a day's pay because he understood that other people depended on him doing his job correctly. I understand that banking is about taking care of other people's financial security, and I take that responsibility very seriously. The starting position had been as a teller, earning $140 per week while learning every aspect of banking operations, from customer service to loan processing to investment management. But what had distinguished me from other entry-level employees had been my genuine fascination with the complexity of financial systems and my determination to understand not just how to process transactions, but why banking regulations existed, and how different types of financial instruments could be used to help customers achieve their goals. Within 6 months, I'd been promoted to head teller. Within 2 years, I'd moved into customer service and loan processing. By 1978, I'd been handling commercial accounts and had begun developing the expertise in business banking that would define my entire career. Each promotion had come with additional responsibilities, higher salaries, and increased trust from management, who recognized that I was building genuine expertise rather than just putting in time. Margaret has an intuitive understanding of commercial banking that typically takes decades to develop, my supervisor had written in a performance review from 1982. She can analyze a business's financial statements and immediately identify both opportunities and potential problems. Our commercial clients specifically request to work with her because they trust her judgment and appreciate her straightforward communication style. The 1980s had been a period of enormous growth both personally and professionally. Thomas and I had married in 1979, bought our first house in Queens in 1981, and had welcomed Sarah in 1983, all while I'd been rapidly advancing through Manhattan trust and savings management hierarchy. By 1985, I'd been promoted to Assistant Vice President of Commercial Banking, overseeing a portfolio of business accounts worth over $50 million and managing a team of 6 loan officers and account managers. The work had been challenging and demanding, requiring 60-hour weeks and constant attention to regulatory changes, market conditions, and individual client needs. But it had also been deeply satisfying, providing the kind of intellectual engagement and professional recognition that had made me one of the most respected banking professionals in Manhattan's competitive financial district. Commercial banking in the 1980s had meant building genuine relationships with business owners who were risking everything to build companies, create jobs, and pursue entrepreneurial dreams that required sophisticated financial support and guidance. My role had been to evaluate loan applications, structure financing packages, monitor business performance, and provide ongoing financial advice that could make the difference between success and failure for dozens of small and medium-sized businesses throughout New York City. Mrs. Brennan understands our business better than we do sometimes. The owner of a successful restaurant chain had told my supervisor during a client satisfaction review. She doesn't just process our loan applications. She helps us plan for growth, manage cash flow, and structure our finances in ways that support our long-term goals. We trust her advice more than our accountants. By 1995, I'd been promoted to Vice President of Commercial Banking, managing a portfolio worth over $150 million and overseeing commercial lending relationships with some of Manhattan's most successful small businesses. The position had required not just technical banking expertise, but also sophisticated understanding of various industries, economic trends, and regulatory environments that influenced commercial lending decisions. The promotion to senior vice president in 2005 had represented the culmination of over 30 years of dedicated professional development and had placed me among the top tier of banking executives in New York City. My responsibilities had included oversight of commercial lending policies, mentoring junior staff, and maintaining relationships with the bank's most important business clients, many of whom had been working with me for decades and had built their success with financing and guidance I'd provided. Margaret Brennan is the kind of banking professional who understands that our success depends on our clients' success, the bank president had said during my promotion ceremony. She's built her career on genuine expertise, absolute integrity, and unwavering commitment to helping businesses grow and thrive. Our commercial banking division's success over the past 3 decades is directly attributable to her leadership and professional excellence. Throughout my banking career, I'd also been building a parallel expertise in personal financial management and investment strategies, both through formal education and practical experience managing my own family's finances. I'd completed advanced certifications in estate planning, investment management, and tax strategy, making me knowledgeable about sophisticated financial planning techniques that extended far beyond traditional banking services. This combination of commercial banking, expertise, and personal financial planning knowledge had made me uniquely qualified to help Sarah and David navigate the complex financial requirements of building successful professional careers in Manhattan's expensive and competitive environment. When Sarah had graduated from law school in 2015 with over $200,000 in student debt, I'd been able to structure repayment strategies that had minimized interest costs while maximizing her cash flow during the crucial early years of her legal career. When David had started his financial technology consulting business in 2018, I'd helped him establish business banking relationships, structure client payment systems, and develop financial management protocols that had allowed him to scale his operations rapidly while maintaining healthy cash flow and minimizing tax liabilities. The joint account arrangement that had become central to our family's financial operations had been my own innovation, developed through decades of experience helping business clients manage complex financial relationships between partners, investors, and family members. I'd understood exactly how to structure the accounts to provide maximum flexibility while maintaining proper legal protections and ensuring that all parties had appropriate access and oversight. What I'd created was essentially a sophisticated, family financial management system that had allowed Sarah and David to focus on their demanding careers, while I'd handled the complex logistics of business banking, investment management, tax planning, and cash flow optimization that had kept their combined professional operations running smoothly. The primary joint account, established in 2021 at Manhattan Trust and Savings, where I'd maintained relationships with senior management for over 40 years, had been designed to serve as the central hub for managing both personal and business finances. Sarah's law practice income, David's consulting fees, and my own retirement distributions had all flowed through this account, which I'd managed with the same meticulous attention to detail that had characterized my entire banking career. By early 2024, the account had grown to contain over $847,000. Representing not just accumulated income, but also strategic savings, emergency reserves, and investment funds that I'd been carefully building to support long-term financial security for our entire family. My management of these funds had generated an additional $34,000 in investment returns over the previous year alone, demonstrating the value of having someone with professional-level financial expertise overseeing family financial operations. But the joint account had been just one component of a much more comprehensive financial structure that I'd developed to support Sarah and David's ambitious goals. I'd also established business accounts for Sarah's law practice, had created investment portfolios for long-term wealth building, had structured retirement contributions to maximize tax advantages, and had developed estate planning strategies that would protect their assets while ensuring proper succession planning. The total value of the financial assets I'd been managing for our family had exceeded $1.8 million, all of it carefully invested and strategically positioned to support both immediate needs and long-term goals. My decades of banking experience had allowed me to negotiate favorable terms with financial institutions, secure premium investment opportunities, and structure financial arrangements that had saved our family thousands of dollars annually in fees, taxes, and missed opportunities. More importantly, my involvement in managing these financial operations had allowed Sarah and David to focus entirely on their demanding careers without having to worry about the complex financial management that had become necessary as their incomes and responsibilities had grown. I'd essentially been serving as their personal chief financial officer, providing the kind of sophisticated financial management that most successful professionals had to pay substantial fees to obtain from external advisors. The apartment in Park Slope had been strategically chosen not just for its proximity to Manhattan, but also for its role as my financial command center. The second bedroom had been converted into a home office equipped with multiple computer monitors, high-speed internet, secure filing systems, and direct access to all the financial institutions and investment platforms that had been necessary for managing our complex financial operations. From this home office, I'd been monitoring market conditions, executing investment transactions, managing cash flow requirements, processing business expenses, and maintaining the detailed financial records that had kept our family's financial affairs organized and optimized. The work had typically required 3 to 4 hours daily, but it had been work I'd genuinely enjoyed and had considered my primary contribution to our family's continued success. The financial management responsibilities had also provided me with a sense of purpose and professional engagement that had made retirement much more satisfying than the passive, isolated lifestyle that many people my age had resigned themselves to accepting. Rather than feeling like a burden or an irrelevant old woman, I'd been actively contributing value while maintaining my professional skills and staying connected to the financial industry that had defined my career. What I hadn't realized was that Sarah and David had been taking this enormous contribution for granted, while gradually developing attitudes toward me that had become increasingly disrespectful and exploitative. They'd been benefiting from professional-level financial management worth easily $50,000 annually in equivalent services, but they'd been treating me like an unpaid servant whose primary value was availability and convenience rather than expertise and competence. The signs of their changing attitude had been subtle at first. Slightly shorter phone calls, less interest in my opinions about financial decisions, occasional comments about my age or capabilities that had seemed like harmless, teasing but had actually reflected deeper assumptions about my declining relevance and value. Over time, these small indicators had accumulated into a pattern of disrespect that had been masked by their continued reliance on my financial services. The most painful aspect of their evolving attitude had been the way they'd begun treating my decades of banking expertise as somehow less relevant or valuable because it had been developed in an earlier era. David, in particular, had occasionally made comments about old-school banking or traditional financial management that had implied my knowledge was outdated rather than foundational and enduring. "Mom, I appreciate everything you do for us," Sarah had said during one particularly frustrating conversation about investment strategies. "But sometimes I think you're being overly conservative because you learned banking when things were different." David and I are comfortable with more aggressive approaches that might generate better returns. These conversations had been particularly frustrating because my conservative approach had actually been generating consistently superior returns compared to the high-risk strategies they'd occasionally wanted to pursue. My decades of experience had taught me how to balance growth potential with security in ways that had protected and grown our assets, even during periods of market volatility that had devastated less experienced investors. The gradual erosion of respect had been accompanied by increasing expectations that I would be available whenever they needed financial services, regardless of my own schedule or personal preferences. Phone calls at all hours requesting immediate account transfers, last-minute requests to research investment opportunities, and assumptions that I would drop everything to handle urgent financial matters had become increasingly common. "Margaret, I need you to wire $15,000 to this client escrow account by 2 p.m. today," Sarah would call to say, without any acknowledgement that I might have other plans or that such requests required considerable time and attention to process correctly. "It's really important that this gets done today, so I hope you can handle it this morning." The casualness of these requests had reflected their assumption that managing their finances was my primary responsibility rather than a valuable service I'd been providing out of family loyalty and professional expertise. They'd been treating me like a personal financial assistant, rather than a retired banking executive who'd been voluntarily contributing professional-level services to support their success. Looking back now, I can see that their attitude had been gradually shifting from gratitude and respect to entitlement and assumption, though the change had been so gradual that I'd initially interpreted their increased reliance on my services as evidence of trust and appreciation rather than exploitation and disrespect. The Brooklyn apartment that had been my sanctuary and operational base was about to become the launching pad for the most expensive lessons Sarah and David would ever receive about the difference between appreciation and exploitation. The 73-year-old woman they'd been taking for granted was actually someone with the banking expertise, financial access, and professional determination to ensure they understood exactly what they'd been risking when they'd decided to treat their mother and primary financial manager like an inconvenient burden rather than a valuable family member. The foundation they'd been taking for granted, my financial expertise, my professional relationships, my access to their accounts, and my absolute commitment to their success, was actually going to become the platform from which I would launch the most comprehensive financial lesson they'd ever receive about respecting the people who'd invested everything in making their dreams possible. What Sarah and David hadn't anticipated was that their plan to treat me as disposable had one fatal flaw. I was actually the person who understood their financial situation better than they did, had access to accounts they'd forgotten existed, and possessed the banking knowledge necessary to restructure their entire financial world in ways they'd never see coming. The investigation that would follow would expose months of systematic disrespect disguised as family convenience, and the response would transform our family dynamics forever, while teaching them that some people fight back with consequences they never saw coming. Standing in my apartment that snowy February evening, surrounded by decades of financial expertise and unlimited access to accounts worth nearly $2 million, I had no idea that the family members I'd been supporting for years were about to abandon me at a subway station during a medical emergency, revealing the true extent of their selfishness and setting in motion events that would change everything forever. Sometimes the people who think you're just a convenient resource are about to discover you're actually someone with the power to restructure their entire financial future. Sarah and David were about to learn that abandoning someone at a subway station was the most expensive mistake they'd ever made in their lives. Standing in my Brooklyn apartment that February morning, reviewing the latest financial statements and investment reports that had become my daily routine, I realized I needed to understand how I'd reached this point of subtle but persistent disrespect from family members who should have been celebrating my contributions rather than taking them for granted. But to comprehend the full scope of what was building toward that devastating subway station incident, you need to know about the life of professional excellence and personal sacrifice I'd built before Sarah and David decided my expertise was something they could exploit rather than appreciate. A life of banking innovation, community leadership, and the kind of financial wisdom that had made their systematic disrespect both possible and ultimately catastrophic. My journey to that Frustrating February morning had begun 73 years earlier, when I'd been born Margaret Rose Richardson to parents who understood that a woman's education and professional competence were not optional luxuries, but essential foundations for survival and dignity in a world that rarely offered women second chances or easy paths to financial security. My father, James Patrick Richardson, had been a construction supervisor for the New York City Department of Public Works, specializing in infrastructure projects that had helped build the modern subway system, highway networks, and public buildings that had defined New York's growth throughout the mid-20th century. He'd spent his career understanding complex systems, managing diverse teams, and ensuring that projects worth millions of dollars were completed on time, within budget, and according to specifications that would keep them functioning safely for decades. Margaret, my father had said during one of our regular Sunday dinner conversations about my future plans, the most important thing you can learn is that competence and reliability are the only real security anyone has in this world. People will always need someone who understands how complex systems work and who can be trusted to handle important responsibilities correctly. My mother, Catherine Marie Richardson, had been equally influential in shaping my understanding of what was possible for an educated woman willing to work harder and think more strategically than the people around her. She'd worked as a bookkeeper for a small manufacturing company in Queens, while also managing our household finances with the kind of meticulous attention to detail that had kept our family financially stable despite the economic uncertainties that had characterized the 1950s and 1960s. "Darling," my mother had told me during my high school years, "never let anyone convince you that being good with numbers and understanding business is somehow unfeminine or inappropriate. The women I know who have the most security and independence are those who understand money, can manage complex financial situations, and refuse to depend on other people for their economic survival." The Richardson household had been intellectually stimulating and financially disciplined in ways that had prepared me for the banking career I would eventually build. Dinner conversations had regularly included discussions of economic trends, municipal finance, construction project management, and the importance of building systems that could function reliably under pressure. Our home had been filled with newspapers, financial magazines, and the kind of analytical thinking that had made complex problems seem solvable rather than overwhelming. By age 16, I'd already been managing our household budget, had developed sophisticated understanding of banking services and loan products, and had begun to understand that successful financial management required much more than just balancing checkbooks. It required strategic thinking, relationship building, and deep knowledge of regulatory systems that most people never bothered to learn. My academic journey had begun at Bishop McDonnell Memorial High School in Brooklyn, a Catholic school known for its rigorous academic standards and its emphasis on preparing young women for professional careers rather than just traditional domestic roles. The school's approach to education had emphasized analytical thinking, clear communication, and the kind of personal discipline that would serve me well in competitive professional environments throughout my career. At Bishop McDonnell, I'd excelled in mathematics, business studies, and economics, while also developing the organizational skills and attention to detail that would characterize my entire approach to professional responsibilities. The school's student body had included daughters of police officers, firefighters, teachers, and small business owners who understood that education was the primary path to economic advancement and social mobility. Miss Richardson, my economics teacher, had written in a recommendation letter that I'd found years later, demonstrates the rare combination of analytical intelligence and practical common sense that characterizes natural leaders in business and finance. She has the mathematical skills to understand complex financial relationships and the personal judgment to make sound decisions under pressure. My senior thesis at Bishop McDonnell had focused on the role of community banks in supporting small business development in Brooklyn's diverse neighborhoods, research that had required me to interview bank managers, small business owners, and community leaders about the relationship between financial services and economic opportunity. The project had given me my first taste of the complex negotiations and relationship management that would characterize my banking career. St. John's University had been the natural next step, offering a rigorous business administration program that would prepare me for graduate-level professional education and eventual management responsibilities in New York's competitive financial sector. St. John's business program had been one of the most respected in the region, requiring students to develop expertise in accounting, economics, statistics, and business law, while also completing internships with major corporations and financial institutions. During my 4 years at St. John's, I'd maintained a 3.7 GPA, while also working part-time as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm in Queens, and completing internships with manufacturers Hanover Trust and Chemical Bank that had provided hands-on experience in commercial banking operations. The internship experiences had been particularly valuable, exposing me to loan processing, customer service, and the regulatory compliance requirements that governed banking operations. Margaret has the intellectual curiosity and professional maturity that characterize successful banking professionals, my advisor at St. John's had written. Her combination of analytical skills, attention to detail, and genuine interest in helping customers solve financial problems makes her an ideal candidate for management roles in commercial banking. My senior thesis at St. John's had examined the potential for community banks to develop innovative loan products for small businesses in immigrant communities, focusing on how traditional banking services could be adapted to serve entrepreneurs whose business models and financial documentation didn't conform to conventional lending standards. The research had required extensive interviews with business owners, community leaders, and banking professionals who were pioneering new approaches to commercial lending. After graduating from St. John's in 1972, I'd spent 6 months working for a small accounting firm in Manhattan, providing bookkeeping and tax preparation services for restaurants, retail stores, and service businesses that needed professional financial management but couldn't afford full-time accounting staff. The position had been excellent preparation for understanding the financial challenges faced by small businesses and had given me practical experience in the kind of hands-on financial problem-solving that would become central to my banking career. TI. Accounting firm experience had also introduced me to the complex relationship between business banking and small business success, as I'd watched client after client struggle with cash flow problems, loan applications, and financial planning, challenges that could have been solved with better banking relationships and more sophisticated financial management strategies. Margaret, you have a natural talent for understanding business financial needs, my supervisor at the accounting firm had observed, after I'd successfully helped a struggling restaurant restructure its loan payments and develop a cash flow management system that had prevented bankruptcy. You don't just understand the numbers. You understand how financial systems affect real businesses and real families. One of my most successful projects at the accounting firm had involved helping a family-owned construction company develop financial systems that could handle the complex requirements of municipal contracts, union payroll management, and equipment financing. The project had required 6 months of intensive work, developing accounting procedures, banking relationships, and cash flow management strategies that had allowed the company to expand from 3 employees to over 20 while maintaining financial stability. Ms. Richardson has demonstrated exceptional ability in developing comprehensive financial management solutions for complex small business operations, the construction company owner had written in a testimonial letter. Her understanding of banking, accounting, and business operations made it possible for us to grow our company while maintaining the financial controls necessary for long-term success. The construction company project had been particularly meaningful because it had demonstrated how sophisticated financial management could transform a family business from survival mode to growth and prosperity. The family had gained not just better financial systems, but also the confidence and knowledge necessary to pursue larger contracts and expand their operations in ways that had improved their economic security for generations. It was during my time at the accounting firm that I'd first begun to understand the enormous gap between the financial services that small businesses needed and the financial services that most banks were actually providing. Traditional banking in the early 1970s had been designed primarily for large corporations and wealthy individuals, with limited understanding of the unique challenges faced by small businesses, working families, and entrepreneurs who were building wealth from modest beginnings. This insight had led directly to my decision to pursue a career in banking, where I believed I could help bridge the gap between institutional financial services and the real-world financial needs of ordinary people, who were working to build better lives for their families. My goal had been to become the kind of banking professional who could understand both the institutional requirements of sound financial management and the human needs of customers who were trusting banks with their life savings and business dreams. The interview process at Manhattan Trust and Savings had been comprehensive and challenging, involving multiple meetings with branch managers, loan officers, and senior executives who were evaluating not just my technical qualifications, but also my potential for building the kind of customer relationships that would drive long-term business success. Miss Richardson, the district manager had said during my final interview, banking is ultimately about trust. Customers need to believe that we understand their financial goals and that we have the expertise and integrity to help them achieve those goals. Do you think you can build that kind of trust with people who may be very different from you in terms of background and experience? My answer had been based on my experience working with diverse business owners at the accounting firm. Sir, I've learned that successful financial relationships are built on competence, honesty, and genuine concern for the customer's success. Whether someone is running a family restaurant or a construction company, they need to know that their banker understands their business and cares about helping them succeed. I believe I can provide that kind of service. The starting position at Manhattan Trust and Savings had been as a teller in the main branch at 485 Fifth Avenue, earning $140 per week while learning the fundamental operations of retail banking, from customer service to transaction processing to regulatory compliance. But what had distinguished me from other entry-level employees had been my systematic approach to understanding not just how to perform banking tasks, but why banking regulations existed and how different financial products could be used to help customers achieve their specific goals. Within my first month as a teller, I'd memorized every bank product, every fee structure, and every regulatory requirement that affected customer transactions. Within 3 months, I'd begun identifying opportunities to help customers optimize their banking relationships by suggesting better account structures, more appropriate loan products, and investment options that could improve their financial situations. Margaret processes transactions faster and more accurately than tellers with years of experience, my branch manager had noted in my first performance review. But more importantly, she uses every customer interaction as an opportunity to provide value-added service that strengthens customer relationships and identifies new business opportunities. The promotion to head teller had come after 8 months, recognizing not just my technical competence, but also my ability to train new employees, manage complex transactions, and handle difficult customer service situations with the kind of professionalism that had enhanced the bank's reputation in Manhattan's competitive financial district. As head teller, I'd been responsible for supervising 5 other tellers, ensuring compliance with all banking regulations, managing cash flow, and security procedures, and serving as the primary liaison between the teller line and the bank's lending and investment departments. The position had required both technical expertise and leadership skills that had prepared me for the management responsibilities I would assume throughout my career. The most challenging aspect of the head teller position had been handling complex customer problems that required both financial expertise and interpersonal skills. Customers dealing with loan defaults, investment losses, estate planning challenges, and business financial crises had needed more than just transaction processing. They'd needed knowledgeable advice, creative solutions, and the kind of personalized a tension that had distinguished Manhattan Trust and Savings from larger, more impersonal banking institutions. Mrs. Brennan has an exceptional ability to understand complex customer financial situations and develop solutions that address both immediate needs and long-term goals, a customer service evaluation had noted. Her combination of technical knowledge and genuine empathy makes her uniquely effective in handling sensitive financial matters. One of my most memorable customer service successes as head teller had involved helping an elderly widow who'd been facing foreclosure on her Brooklyn home due to confusion about estate planning and loan inheritance. The situation had required 3 weeks of research, coordination with estate attorneys, and negotiations with our loan department to develop a solution that had allowed her to keep her home while restructuring her financial obligations in manageable ways. Margaret Brennan saved my home and probably my life, the customer had written in a letter to the bank president. She didn't just process my transactions. She took the time to understand my situation and worked with me to find solutions that other banks had told me were impossible. Her expertise and compassion made all the difference. The transition from head teller to customer service representative had come in 1975, representing my first move into the relationship management and financial advisory roles that would define the rest of my career. Customer service at Manhattan Trust and Savings had meant serving as the primary contact for the bank's most important individual and small business customers, requiring expertise in multiple banking products and the ability to coordinate complex financial solutions across different departments. As a customer service representative, I'd been responsible for managing relationships with approximately 200 high-value customers, including small business owners, professionals, and wealthy individuals who required sophisticated financial services and personalized attention. The role had involved everything from basic account management to complex loan structuring to investment advisory services that had required advanced knowledge of financial markets and tax planning strategies. The customer service position had also been my introduction to commercial banking, as many of my assigned customers had been small business owners who needed banking services that went far beyond simple checking and savings accounts. Managing relationships with restaurants, retail stores, service companies, and small manufacturers had required understanding of business financial statements, cash flow analysis, and the unique banking needs of different industries. Margaret has developed expertise in small business banking that typically takes years to acquire, my supervisor had written in a 1977 performance review. Her ability to analyze business financial statements and recommend appropriate banking solutions has made her one of our most valuable customer service representatives. By 1978, I'd been handling increasingly complex commercial banking relationships and had begun to specialize in the kind of small business lending and financial management services that would become my primary area of expertise. The combination of technical banking knowledge and genuine understanding of small business operations had made me particularly effective in helping entrepreneurs access capital, manage cash flow, and structure their financial operations for growth and stability. The promotion to loan officer in 1979 had represented my formal entry into commercial banking and had required additional training in credit analysis, loan structuring, and the regulatory requirements that governed commercial lending. As a loan officer, I'd been responsible for evaluating loan applications, structuring financing packages, and monitoring the ongoing financial performance of business customers who'd received credit facilities from the bank. Commercial lending, in the late 1970s, had required both analytical skills and relationship management abilities, as successful loan officers needed to understand not just the financial aspects of loan applications, but also the industries, markets, and management capabilities that would determine whether businesses could successfully repay their obligations. My approach had been to develop deep knowledge of the specific challenges and opportunities faced by different types of businesses, allowing me to structure loans that supported growth while maintaining appropriate risk management. Margaret's loan portfolio has the lowest default rate in our commercial banking division, the chief lending officer had noted in 1981. Her thorough credit analysis and ongoing relationship management ensure that our business customers receive appropriate financing while maintaining excellent repayment performance. One of my most successful loan relationships had been with a family-owned Italian restaurant that had needed financing to expand from a single location in Brooklyn to 3 locations throughout the city. The project had required developing a complex financing package that had included equipment loans, real estate financing, and working capital facilities that had been structured to accommodate the seasonal variations and cash flow patterns that characterized the restaurant business. Mrs. Brennan understood our business better than we did, the restaurant owner had said during a customer appreciation event. She didn't just approve our loan, she helped us plan our expansion in ways that ensured we could handle the debt service while building a successful business. Her expertise made the difference between success and failure. The restaurant financing had been particularly challenging because it had required coordinating multiple types of credit facilities, managing construction financing during the build-out phase, and providing ongoing financial advice that had helped the family navigate the complex operational challenges of managing multiple restaurant locations. The relationship had lasted over 15 years and had resulted in additional financing for further expansion and equipment upgrades. Throughout the early 1980s, my commercial lending portfolio had grown to include over 150 business relationships, spanning multiple industries, from construction and manufacturing to retail and professional services. Each relationship had required ongoing management, regular financial analysis, and the kind of personalized attention that had helped businesses succeed while maintaining excellent credit performance for the bank. The promotion to assistant vice president in 1985 had recognized not just my individual success in commercial lending, but also my ability to mentor junior staff and contribute to the development of banking policies and procedures that had improved the entire commercial banking division's performance. As an AVP, I'd been responsible for managing a team of loan officers while also handling the bank's most complex commercial relationships. The management responsibilities had required developing new skills in team leadership, strategic planning, and the kind of institutional thinking that went beyond individual customer relationships to consider how banking services could be structured to serve entire market segments more effectively. My approach had been to combine hands-on involvement in complex lending decisions with systematic development of junior staff who could handle routine commercial banking relationships independently. Margaret has transformed our commercial banking division's approach to small business lending, the bank president had noted during my promotion ceremony. Her combination of technical expertise and relationship management skills has not only improved our credit performance, but also enhanced our reputation among small business owners throughout Manhattan. The assistant vice president role had also involved representing Manhattan Trust and Savings in various business and community organizations, including the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, the Small Business Development Council, and industry associations that had provided networking opportunities and enhanced the bank's visibility among potential commercial customers. These community involvement activities had been personally rewarding while also contributing to business development that had expanded our commercial customer base and had strengthened relationships with other financial institutions, accounting firms, and business service providers who had become important sources of referrals and collaborative opportunities. The 1990s had brought new challenges and opportunities as the banking industry had undergone significant changes due to deregulation, technological advancement, and increased competition from non-traditional financial service providers. My response had been to deepen my expertise in specialized areas of commercial banking, while also developing knowledge of new financial products and services that could help business customers adapt to changing market conditions. The promotion to vice president in 1995 had placed me among the senior management team responsible for strategic planning, policy development, and oversight of Manhattan Trust and Savings' entire commercial banking operation. My portfolio had included responsibility for over $150 million in commercial loans and had required coordination with investment services, trust and estate planning, and international banking divisions to provide comprehensive financial solutions for sophisticated business customers. As vice president, I'd also been responsible for developing new business banking products and services that had kept Manhattan Trust and Savings competitive in an increasingly crowded marketplace. My initiatives had included specialized lending programs for women-owned businesses, minority entrepreneurs, and technology startups that had required innovative approaches to credit analysis and risk management. Margaret has positioned Manhattan Trust and Savings as the preferred banking partner for innovative small businesses throughout Manhattan, a Business Journal article had noted in 1998. Her understanding of emerging industries and her willingness to develop creative financing solutions have made the bank a leader in supporting entrepreneurial growth. The final phase of my career, from 2005 until my retirement in 2018 as senior vice president, had been dedicated to mentoring the next generation of commercial banking professionals while also managing the bank's most important and complex business relationships. As senior vice president, I'd overseen commercial lending operations worth over $400 million and had been responsible for training and development programs that had prepared dozens of junior staff for management roles throughout the banking industry. The mentoring aspect of my senior role had been particularly meaningful, as I'd been able to share 4 decades of banking expertise with young professionals who'd been building their own careers in an increasingly complex and competitive financial environment. My approach had been to combine technical training with real-world experience, providing junior staff with opportunities to handle challenging customer relationships under supervision while building the confidence and expertise necessary for career advancement. Margaret Brennan has shaped more successful banking careers than any other executive in our industry, the American Banking Association had noted when presenting me with their Outstanding Professional Achievement Award in 2016. Her commitment to excellence and her dedication to developing others have made lasting contributions to commercial banking throughout the New York metropolitan area. Upon my retirement in 2018, I'd been recognized not just for individual achievements, but for institutional contributions that had enhanced Manhattan Trust and Savings' reputation and had established standards for commercial banking excellence that had influenced practices throughout the industry. My 45-year career had encompassed every aspect of commercial banking from basic customer service to senior executive leadership, providing me with comprehensive understanding of financial institutions and the expertise necessary to navigate complex financial challenges. Standing in my Brooklyn apartment that February morning, surrounded by the financial documents and investment portfolios that represented decades of professional expertise, I had no understanding that the family members I'd been supporting with this extensive knowledge were about to abandon me at a subway station, revealing the true scope of their ingratitude and setting in motion events that would demonstrate exactly what happened when people underestimated someone with my capabilities and resources. The banking expertise, professional relationships, financial access, and personal determination that Sarah and David were taking for granted were actually going to become the foundation for teaching them the most expensive lesson of their lives about respecting the people who'd invested everything in making their success possible. Standing in my Brooklyn apartment that February morning, reviewing the increasingly concerning patterns in Sarah and David's behavior toward me, I couldn't help but remember how different things had been just 3 years ago, when Sarah had first proposed the joint account arrangement and had spoken with such genuine enthusiasm about building a family financial partnership that would benefit everyone while honoring the decades of sacrifice and support I'd provided throughout her education and early career. It was a conversation that had taken place during what I now recognize as the golden beginning of our adult financial relationship. A period when Sarah and David seemed genuinely committed to respecting my expertise while building the kind of multi-generational wealth management system that would secure our family's financial future for decades. The conversation had occurred in April 2021, just 8 months after Thomas's death, when I'd been struggling with the overwhelming complexity of managing substantial financial assets alone while also dealing with the emotional challenges of widowhood and the practical adjustments required. By living independently for the first time in nearly 40 years of marriage, everything about my daily financial management routine had required painful adaptation, from making investment decisions without Thomas's input to managing cash flow requirements that had previously been shared responsibilities. Sarah had visited me that Sunday afternoon in my Brooklyn apartment, arriving with fresh bagels from Russ and Daughters and a detailed financial planning proposal that she and David had been developing for several weeks. The gesture had touched me deeply during those difficult months when even routine financial tasks had felt overwhelming and emotionally fraught due to the memories they triggered of collaborative decision-making with Thomas. "Mom, I've been thinking about your financial situation and ours," Sarah had said as we'd sat in my living room surrounded by the financial documents and banking statements that had been accumulating since Thomas's death. "You have incredible expertise that David and I could really benefit from, and we have income and opportunities that could help optimize all our financial resources if we coordinated our efforts more systematically." Sarah's proposal had seemed both thoughtful and strategically sound, reflecting the kind of analytical thinking that had characterized her approach to complex legal problems throughout her career. She'd clearly spent considerable time researching family financial management strategies and had developed a comprehensive plan that would leverage my banking expertise while providing security and growth opportunities for everyone involved. "I know Dad's death has left you managing complex financial decisions alone," Sarah had continued. "And I also know that David and I are dealing with increasingly sophisticated financial situations that could really benefit from someone with your level of banking expertise. What if we created a coordinated family financial management system that would help everyone while also ensuring you're not carrying all these responsibilities by yourself?" The proposal she'd outlined had seemed like the perfect solution to multiple challenges we'd all been facing. Rather than continuing to manage our finances separately while missing opportunities for coordination and optimization, we could create an integrated system that would maximize our combined resources while providing appropriate security and growth potential for different life stages and risk tolerances. "David and I have been discussing this extensively," Sarah had explained, spreading out financial documents and planning materials that demonstrated the thoroughness of their preparation. "We think a joint account system would allow us to coordinate our financial strategies while ensuring everyone maintains appropriate autonomy and access to the resources they need." The financial arrangements she'd proposed had been sophisticated and had demonstrated genuine respect for my expertise and experience. Rather than simply asking me to help with basic financial tasks, they'd envisioned a comprehensive family wealth management system that would utilize my professional-level banking knowledge to optimize investment strategies, minimize tax liabilities, and coordinate financial planning across different income sources and life goals. "Mom, we want this to be a true partnership that recognizes your expertise, while also providing security and growth opportunities for everyone," Sarah had said. "You'd be functioning essentially as our family's chief financial officer, using your decades of banking experience to manage resources that would be much more difficult for David and me to handle effectively while we're focused on our demanding careers." But what had impressed me most about Sarah's proposal had been her explicit recognition of the financial sacrifices Thomas and I had made throughout her education, and her understanding that family financial coordination should reflect gratitude and respect rather than exploitation or assumption of entitlement. "David and I have been calculating the total investment you and Dad made in my education and career development," Sarah had continued, producing a detailed analysis that had included not just direct educational expenses, but also the opportunity, costs, and foregone lifestyle improvements that had resulted from our commitment to her success. "We realize that our current financial situation exists because of your sacrifices, and we want to make sure our family financial planning reflects that contribution and ensures you benefit from the success you made possible." During those first months after we'd established the joint account system, Sarah and David had shown remarkable appreciation for my financial management contributions and had seemed genuinely excited about the optimization and growth opportunities that had resulted from coordinating our previously separate financial operations. My first major contribution to their financial success had been restructuring their debt obligations to take advantage of my banking relationships and credit optimization expertise. When I'd reviewed their financial situation in detail, I'd discovered that they'd been paying unnecessarily high interest rates on student loans, had suboptimal credit card arrangements, and had missed opportunities for business expense management that had been costing them over $18,000 annually in excessive fees and lost tax advantages. "Mom, I can't believe the difference your expertise has made in just 3 months," Sarah had said enthusiastically when I'd presented the results of my debt restructuring project. "The interest savings alone will pay for a vacation to Europe this year, and the business expense optimization you developed is going to improve David's consulting cash flow by at least $15,000 annually." Sarah's genuine excitement about the financial improvements I'd been able to implement had been deeply gratifying, reflecting the kind of intellectual respect and professional appreciation that had characterized our relationship during its golden period. She'd asked detailed questions about my banking strategies, had shown genuine interest in learning about financial management techniques, and had expressed pride in having a mother with such sophisticated professional expertise. David had been equally appreciative of my financial contributions, expressing amazement at the optimization opportunities I'd identified and the systematic improvements I'd been able to implement in their previously disorganized financial operations. "Margaret, your banking experience has already saved us more money than I made in my first 2 years as a consultant," David had said as we'd reviewed the results of my initial financial analysis. I had no idea that proper financial management could have such a significant impact on our actual disposable income. "You're essentially giving us a raise without us having to earn more money." David's recognition of the monetary value of my contributions had been important validation, especially since his background in financial technology had given him credibility in assessing the sophistication and effectiveness of financial management strategies. The success of my initial debt restructuring and expense optimization projects had encouraged Sarah and David to request increasingly comprehensive financial management services, and I'd gladly expanded my involvement to include investment management, tax planning, and business financial coordination that had required my full range of banking expertise. My second major project had been developing investment strategies that would coordinate their individual retirement planning with opportunities for joint investments that could provide both growth and tax advantages. The project had required extensive research into investment options, tax implications, and risk management strategies that would support both short-term cash flow needs and long-term wealth-building goals. "Margaret, your investment recommendations have generated returns that are significantly better than what our previous financial advisor was achieving," Sarah had reported after 6 months of implementing my investment strategies. "And the tax planning coordination you developed has reduced our combined tax liability by over $12,000 this year, compared to what we would have paid with separate financial management." The investment success had been particularly satisfying because it had demonstrated that my decades of banking experience had provided expertise that went far beyond basic account management, to include sophisticated wealth-building strategies that most families never had access to unless they could afford expensive private banking services. My third major contribution had been establishing business banking relationships and financial management systems for David's consulting practice that had allowed him to scale his operations while maintaining optimal cash flow and minimizing administrative overhead. The project had required applying my commercial banking expertise to help him establish appropriate business credit facilities, optimize client payment systems, and develop financial reporting that supported strategic planning and tax management. "Mom, the business banking system you created for David has transformed his entire approach to consulting," Sarah had told me during one of our regular family financial review meetings. "His cash flow is more predictable, his administrative costs are lower, and he's able to take on larger projects because he has better financial management and credit access." The business banking project had been particularly meaningful because it had demonstrated how my commercial banking expertise could be applied to support entrepreneurial success in contemporary business environments, even though my formal banking career had ended several years earlier. During this golden period of our financial relationship, Sarah and David had consistently expressed gratitude for my contributions, while also demonstrating respect for my expertise and judgment in ways that had made me feel valued and appreciated, rather than taken for granted or exploited. Mom, having access to your banking expertise is like having a private wealth management firm dedicated specifically to our family's success, Sarah had said during one particularly memorable family dinner. Most people our age are struggling with basic financial management while trying to build their careers. We have the enormous advantage of professional-level financial guidance that's allowing us to optimize everything and build wealth much faster than would otherwise be possible. Sarah's recognition of the competitive advantage provided by my expertise had been accompanied by practical expressions of appreciation that had demonstrated genuine understanding of the value I was providing. Rather than treating my financial services as obligations or expectations, they'd regularly acknowledged the substantial monetary value of my contributions and had made efforts to ensure I felt respected and appreciated. During the golden period, our family dinners had become regular celebrations of shared financial success and mutual appreciation. Sarah and David had regularly invited me to share detailed reports about our financial performance, investment results, and optimization opportunities, treating my expertise as a source of family pride rather than a burden or an assumption. Love our family financial review meetings, David had said during one particularly successful quarter, when our coordinated investment strategies had generated returns that had exceeded our projections. Margaret's expertise gives us confidence that we're making smart decisions and taking advantage of opportunities that most families miss entirely. These family financial discussions had provided opportunities for me to share not just performance, results, but also the strategic thinking and market analysis that had informed my management decisions. Sarah and David had been genuinely interested in learning about banking principles, investment strategies, and financial planning techniques that would enhance their own financial literacy while also improving their understanding of wealth management principles. Margaret has such sophisticated understanding of financial markets and banking systems, one of Sarah's legal colleagues had observed after joining us for dinner and hearing about our family financial coordination. Most families never have access to that level of expertise. Sarah and David are incredibly fortunate to have someone with professional banking experience managing their financial planning. These social acknowledgments of my expertise had been personally satisfying while also contributing to Sarah and David's professional reputations within their respective industries. Their colleagues had been impressed by the sophistication of their financial management and had often requested referrals to financial advisors, not realizing that their apparent financial sophistication had resulted from having a retired bank executive managing their affairs. Sarah had often used professional networking events to express pride in my expertise and my contributions to their financial success, presenting me as an example of successful aging and professional achievement that other families could aspire to emulate if they were fortunate enough to have family members with relevant expertise. My mother spent 45 years in commercial banking, rising to senior vice president at Manhattan Trust and Savings, Sarah had explained to curious colleagues. Her expertise has been invaluable in helping David and me optimize our financial strategies and build wealth more effectively than we could have managed independently. Having professional-level financial guidance within the family has been an enormous advantage. During this golden period of our relationship, Sarah and David had also been careful to ensure that our financial coordination enhanced rather than diminished my independence and financial security. Rather than treating my involvement as an opportunity to control my assets or limit my autonomy, they'd structured our arrangements to provide me with enhanced flexibility and access while maintaining appropriate boundaries and respect for my individual financial goals. The joint account system we'd established had included multiple tiers designed to address different types of financial needs and objectives. The primary operating account had been used for coordinating routine expenses, bill payments, and cash flow management that benefited from centralized oversight and optimization. Secondary accounts had been designated for investment coordination, business expenses, and special projects that required collaborative planning and execution. But I'd also maintained completely independent accounts for my personal expenses, discretionary spending, and individual financial goals that weren't subject to family coordination or oversight. Sarah and David had explicitly supported my financial independence and had regularly encouraged me to pursue personal financial objectives that reflected my individual preferences and priorities. Mom, we want to make sure our financial coordination enhances your independence rather than limiting it, Sarah had said during one of our planning sessions. The goal is to optimize our combined resources while ensuring everyone maintains autonomy over their personal financial decisions. The respect for my financial independence had been accompanied by practical support for my individual goals and interests, including encouragement for discretionary spending on travel, cultural activities, and personal enrichment that had reflected my individual preferences rather than family priorities. During this period, Sarah and David had also been explicitly supportive of my social activities and community involvement, understanding that my professional reputation and industry relationships were valuable assets that should be maintained and leveraged rather than neglected or dismissed due to retirement status. My continued involvement in banking industry organizations, professional networking events, and community financial education programs had been encouraged and supported as activities that maintained my professional credibility while also providing networking opportunities that could benefit our family's financial interests. Margaret's professional relationships and industry knowledge are valuable assets that benefit our entire family, David had observed during one of our strategic planning discussions. Her reputation in the banking community provides us with access to opportunities and expertise that would be impossible to obtain through conventional channels. The golden period had also been characterized by collaborative planning for major financial decisions that affected our entire family's long-term security and growth potential. Rather than making unilateral decisions or simply implementing my recommendations without discussion, Sarah and David had insisted on comprehensive consultation and collaborative decision-making that had respected my expertise while also incorporating their perspectives and preferences. One of our most successful collaborative projects had been developing a comprehensive estate planning strategy that had coordinated tax minimization, wealth transfer, and succession planning in ways that had optimized benefits for multiple generations while maintaining flexibility for changing circumstances and objectives. Mom, your expertise in estate planning and wealth management is helping us build financial security that will benefit not just us but potentially future generations, Sarah had said during our estate planning discussions. The strategies you're developing will ensure that our family's wealth continues to grow and provide opportunities for children and grandchildren we haven't even had yet. The estate planning project had been particularly meaningful because it had demonstrated Sarah and David's commitment to long-term family financial success, rather than just immediate benefit maximization. Their willingness to invest time and resources in sophisticated planning that might not provide immediate returns had reflected genuine appreciation for wealth-building principles and family financial responsibility. Our collaborative financial management had also extended to major purchases and lifestyle decisions that required coordination between individual preferences and family financial optimization. Rather than making independent decisions that might conflict with our overall financial strategies, we'd developed consultation processes that had ensured major expenditures supported our coordinated objectives while respecting individual autonomy and preferences. The purchase of Sarah and David's Upper East Side apartment had been our first major test of collaborative financial decision-making, requiring coordination between their lifestyle preferences, my lending expertise, and our families' overall investment strategies. The project had required extensive market analysis, financing optimization, and tax planning that had demonstrated the benefits of coordinated family financial management. Margaret's banking expertise made the difference between getting our dream apartment and settling for something much less desirable, David had explained to friends who'd been impressed by their successful real estate acquisition. Her knowledge of commercial lending and her industry relationships allowed us to secure financing terms that wouldn't have been available through conventional mortgage applications. The real estate project had been particularly successful because it had demonstrated how my professional relationships and expertise could be leveraged to achieve objectives that would have been difficult or impossible for Sarah and David to accomplish independently, regardless of their professional success and earning capacity. By the spring of 2022, our family financial coordination had achieved results that had exceeded even our most optimistic projections. Our combined investment returns had outperformed market benchmarks. Our tax optimization strategies had generated substantial savings, and our overall financial position had improved dramatically compared to what any of us could have achieved through independent financial management. The success of our financial partnership had also contributed to enhanced lifestyle and professional opportunities for everyone involved. Sarah's law practice had benefited from improved cash flow management and business expense optimization that had allowed her to focus on legal work rather than administrative concerns. David's consulting practice had expanded significantly due to better financial management and credit access that had enabled him to pursue larger projects and more demanding clients. My own financial situation had improved substantially due to coordinated investment strategies and tax planning that had maximized the efficiency of my retirement income while also providing opportunities for continued wealth building that would support long-term security and discretionary spending for travel and cultural activities. Our family financial coordination has been successful beyond anything I imagined when we started this process, I'd noted during our one-year anniversary review meeting. Everyone's financial situation has improved. We've achieved objectives that would have been impossible independently, and we've built systems that will continue generating benefits for years to come. The anniversary review had been a celebration of mutual success and shared accomplishment that had reinforced everyone's commitment to continued collaboration and optimization. Sarah and David had expressed genuine gratitude for my contributions, while also acknowledging that their own compliance with our coordinated strategies had been essential for achieving our collective success. "Mom, this partnership has been transformative for our entire family," Sarah had said during the anniversary celebration. "Your expertise has accelerated our wealth building by years, maybe decades, compared to what we could have achieved independently. But more importantly, working together has strengthened our family relationships and given us shared goals that benefit everyone." The family relationship enhancement had been an unexpected but deeply meaningful benefit of our financial coordination. Rather than creating stress or conflict, our collaborative financial management had provided regular opportunities for positive interaction, shared problem-solving, and mutual appreciation that had enriched our family dynamics in ways that had extended far beyond financial results. By the fall of 2022, our family financial partnership had reached what I now recognize as its peak effectiveness and harmony, with regular coordination that had produced consistently excellent results while maintaining appropriate respect for individual autonomy and family relationships that had seemed to validate all the effort and expertise I'd invested in building strong intergenerational wealth management. Family dinners had become celebrations of shared financial achievement and collaborative planning that had included sophisticated conversations about market analysis, investment, strategies, and wealth-building principles that had demonstrated the intellectual engagement and mutual respect that had characterized our relationship during this golden period. "I love our family financial discussions," Sarah had said during one particularly successful quarter. "They combine professional-level expertise with family commitment in ways that make financial planning both effective and personally meaningful. Having these conversations with you makes David and me better at managing money while also strengthening our family relationships. The mutual satisfaction with our financial coordination had seemed genuine and sustainable, providing the foundation for long-term family wealth building that would support everyone's individual goals while maintaining strong collaborative relationships and shared commitment to continued success and optimization. Looking back now, I realize that this golden period had represented the peak of Sarah and David's genuine respect for my expertise and appreciation for my contributions, before their perspective had begun shifting toward viewing my financial services as entitlements, rather than valuable professional contributions that deserved recognition and reciprocal respect. The transition from partnership to exploitation had been so gradual that I'd initially missed the warning signs, interpreting their increasing demands and decreasing acknowledgement as natural evolution of our working relationship rather than evidence of a systematic shift toward taking my contributions for granted while expecting increased availability and service without corresponding appreciation or consideration. But standing in my Brooklyn apartment that February morning, reviewing the subtle but persistent changes in their attitudes and expectations, I was beginning to understand that the golden period of our financial relationship had ended, and that Sarah and David's true feelings about my contributions and my value as a family member were about to be revealed in ways that would change our family dynamics forever. Sometimes the people who seem most appreciative of your expertise are actually calculating how to maximize their benefit while minimizing their obligations to show respect and consideration. Sarah and David were about to learn that the woman they'd begun taking for granted was actually someone with the banking expertise, financial access, and professional determination to ensure they regretted ever treating her contributions as entitlements rather than valuable services deserving of appreciation and respect. Standing in my Brooklyn apartment that February morning, still processing the mounting disrespect and casual dismissal I'd been experiencing from Sarah and David over the past 6 months, I felt the last fragments of my trust in their character and gratitude crumbling away. But what I discovered when that snowy evening's events unfolded would transform my disappointment and frustration into a cold, calculating determination that would change everything forever and demonstrate that some 73-year-old women fight back with consequences that last a lifetime. The breaking point had been building for months through a series of incidents that had gradually revealed Sarah and David's true feelings about my contributions and their growing assumption that my financial expertise was something they were entitled to rather than a valuable service I'd been providing out of family loyalty and professional pride. The shift had begun subtly in the fall of 2022, when Sarah's law practice had achieved partnership level and David's consulting business had expanded to include several Fortune 500 clients. Their professional success, which had been significantly accelerated by the financial optimization I'd provided, had somehow translated into decreased appreciation for my contributions rather than increased gratitude for the foundation I'd helped them build. "Mom, we've been discussing our financial situation, and David and I think we need to restructure some of our arrangements to reflect our increased earning capacity and professional responsibilities," Sarah had said during what should have been a routine family dinner in October. "We're grateful for everything you've done to help us get established, but we're reaching a point where we need more autonomous control over our financial operations." The language shift from partnership to arrangements and from collaboration to autonomous control had been immediate and unmistakable, representing a complete reversal of the mutual respect and shared decision-making that had characterized our golden period. Gone was the appreciation for my expertise and acknowledgement of my contributions. In its place was the kind of dismissive attitude that suggested they'd decided my involvement was no longer necessary now that they'd achieved the success my management had made possible. "Sarah, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by restructuring," I'd replied, trying to keep my voice calm despite the surge of concern I'd felt at this sudden change in attitude. "Our current system has been generating excellent results for everyone. What specific changes are you thinking about?" David had immediately joined the discussion, his tone carrying the kind of condescending patience typically reserved for explaining simple concepts to people who weren't quite capable of understanding complex matters. "Margaret, we appreciate everything you've taught us about financial management," David had said, his voice carrying false warmth that had made his dismissal even more insulting. "But Sarah and I have learned enough from working with you that we're confident we can handle most of our financial operations independently now. We don't want to continue imposing on your time and energy for routine financial tasks." The phrase, "imposing on your time," had been particularly offensive, given that managing their finances had been my primary source of purpose and intellectual engagement since Thomas's death. They hadn't been imposing on me. They'd been providing me with meaningful work that had utilized my decades of expertise while contributing significantly to our family's success. But more disturbing than their dismissive language had been the specific changes they'd proposed, which would have eliminated my involvement in their most important financial decisions, while maintaining my responsibility for routine administrative tasks that required time and effort, but provided no intellectual satisfaction or strategic input. "We'd like you to continue handling basic account management and bill processing," Sarah had explained. "But David and I want to take direct control of investment decisions, business financial planning, and major expenditure approvals. We feel like we're ready to handle those responsibilities without consultation." The proposal had been a calculated insult disguised as professional development. They'd wanted to retain access to my administrative services while eliminating my authority over the strategic decisions that had been generating superior results and had required my most sophisticated expertise. Essentially, they'd wanted to demote me from chief financial officer to bookkeeper while maintaining the same level of availability and service. "Sarah, I'm concerned that this approach might not serve your best interests," I'd responded, trying to maintain professional objectivity despite my growing anger. "The strategic coordination and optimization we've been implementing requires comprehensive oversight and expertise that takes decades to develop. Fragmenting the decision-making process could reduce effectiveness and create unnecessary risks." But Sarah and David had been prepared for my objections, responding with what was clearly a coordinated strategy designed to position them as mature professionals who'd outgrown their need for family assistance, in contrast to my supposedly overprotective resistance to their independence. "Mom, we understand your concerns, but David and I are successful professionals with advanced education and significant experience managing complex financial matters," Sarah had said, using her legal training to present their position as reasonable, "and my resistance as evidence of controlling behavior. We're grateful for your guidance during our early career development, but we need to take full responsibility for our own financial decisions now." The suggestion that my resistance to their poorly conceived restructuring was evidence of controlling behavior had been so manipulative and unfair that I'd left the dinner without responding, returning to my apartment with a mixture of hurt and determination that had made sleep impossible. Over the following months, Sarah and David's attitude toward my financial contributions had continued to deteriorate, even as they'd maintained their expectation that I would continue providing administrative services and emergency assistance whenever they encountered problems or needed immediate help with complex financial matters. By January 2024, they'd been treating me like an on-call financial assistant rather than a respected family member, making demands for immediate service while showing no appreciation for the expertise and effort required to maintain their financial operations effectively. "Margaret, I need you to wire $25,000 to this escrow account by noon today," Sarah would call to say, without any acknowledgement that such requests required considerable time and attention to process correctly. "It's really important that this gets done today, so I hope you can handle it this morning." The casual assumption that I would drop everything to handle their urgent financial needs, combined with their complete lack of appreciation or acknowledgement of the complexity involved in managing such transactions safely and correctly, had reflected their transformation from grateful family members to entitled employers who expected service without showing respect. Even more frustrating had been their tendency to blame me when their independent financial decisions had produced poor results, despite their insistence on making those decisions without my input or consultation. When David's attempt to optimize their investment allocation had resulted in a $23,000 loss during a market downturn that I'd predicted and had warned them about, rather than acknowledging their mistake or requesting my analysis for future decisions, they'd suggested that my conservative approach had made them overly cautious about pursuing necessary growth strategies. "Margaret, we think your influence has made us too risk-averse," David had said during a particularly frustrating conversation about their investment losses. "We need to be more aggressive about pursuing growth opportunities, even if that means accepting higher volatility and occasional losses." The irony that their aggressive strategy had lost more money in 3 months than my conservative approach had ever lost in any 12-month period had been completely lost on them, as had the fact that my risk management strategies had been specifically designed to prevent exactly the kind of unnecessary losses they'd just experienced. But the most devastating aspect of their evolving attitude had been the way they'd begun treating my age and retirement status as evidence of declining competence rather than accumulated wisdom and experience. Comments about keeping up with modern financial technology and understanding contemporary market conditions had become increasingly common, despite the fact that my investment performance had consistently outperformed their independent decisions. "Mom, I know you have a lot of experience with traditional banking," Sarah had said during one particularly condescending conversation. "But David and I are dealing with financial technologies and investment strategies that might be different from what you're familiar with from your career." The suggestion that my 45 years of banking experience hadn't included exposure to modern financial concepts had been both insulting and demonstrably false. Given that my management of their finances had consistently generated superior results using exactly the kind of sophisticated strategies they'd claimed I couldn't understand, the deterioration of their respect and appreciation had reached a crisis point in early February, when they'd informed me that they were planning to streamline our financial arrangements by eliminating most of the joint accounts and transferring primary management responsibility to a professional financial advisory firm that could provide contemporary wealth management services. "Margaret, we've decided to engage Wellington Asset Management to handle our primary investment and financial planning," David had announced during what I'd expected to be a routine financial review meeting. "They specialize in high net worth professionals and can provide services that are more aligned with our current needs and goals." The decision to replace my expertise with an expensive financial advisory firm, after 3 years of superior performance and substantial savings compared to professional service costs, had been the ultimate demonstration of their ingratitude and disrespect. They'd been willing to pay substantial fees to strangers, rather than continue working with a family member whose expertise had been generating consistently excellent results. "David, I'm curious about the reasoning behind this decision," I'd said, trying to maintain professional composure despite my shock and hurt. "Our current financial performance has been excellent, our costs have been minimal, and our coordination has been generating substantial benefits for everyone. What specific advantages do you expect from this change?" Sarah had been prepared with a list of justifications that had revealed the depth of their disrespect and their complete misunderstanding of the value I'd been providing. "Mom, we need financial advisors who understand our professional situations and can provide specialized services for high-income professionals," Sarah had explained. "Wellington has expertise in tax planning for law firm partners and technology, consultants that might be more relevant than traditional banking experience." The implication that my traditional banking experience was somehow less relevant than the generic financial planning services offered by Wellington Asset Management had been both insulting and factually incorrect. My analysis of Wellington's track record had shown that their investment performance was significantly inferior to what I'd been achieving, and their fee structure would have cost Sarah and David over $35,000 annually for services I'd been providing, at no charge. But the most shocking revelation had been their assumption that our joint account arrangements could be terminated unilaterally, without consultation or consideration of the legal and practical implications of such changes. "We'll need you to sign documentation transferring account control to our individual names," David had said, producing legal papers that had obviously been prepared in advance without my knowledge or input. "Wellington will be setting up new investment accounts that will replace our current joint arrangements." The casual assumption that I would simply agree to eliminate financial arrangements that had taken years to optimize, without any discussion of alternatives or consideration of my own interests and objectives, had revealed the complete extent of their selfishness and disrespect. That evening, I'd made several phone calls that would form the foundation of my investigation into exactly what Sarah and David had been planning behind my back, and what I'd discovered had been far more shocking than anything I could have imagined. My first call had been to Marcus Rodriguez, a private investigator I'd known through banking, industry connections who specialized in financial fraud and family exploitation cases. Marcus had extensive experience documenting systematic financial abuse and had been recommended by several colleagues who'd faced similar family betrayals. "Mrs. Brennan," Marcus had said after I'd explained the situation, "what you're describing sounds like a classic case of financial elder exploitation disguised as family financial planning. Let me research their recent activities and see what we can discover about their actual intentions and any steps they might have taken without your knowledge." My second call had been to Patricia Williams, an elder law attorney whose expertise in financial abuse cases had been recommended by my longtime legal advisor. Patricia specialized in protecting seniors from family members who attempted to exploit their resources or manipulate their financial arrangements for personal benefit. "Margaret, the pattern you're describing suggests systematic planning to eliminate your control over assets you've been managing while maintaining access to the benefits of your expertise," Patricia had said. "This kind of behavior often escalates, and I'd recommend documenting everything while we investigate the full scope of their planning." My third call had been to my former colleague Harrison Chen, who'd retired as Chief Operating Officer of Manhattan Trust and Savings and who maintained extensive connections throughout the New York banking community. Harrison had access to information, systems, and professional networks that could provide insights into financial activities that might not be visible through normal channels. "Margaret, I'll make some discreet inquiries and see what I can learn about any new account openings or financial service arrangements," Harrison had said. "If they're planning to restructure your joint accounts, there should be documentation and preliminary activities that we can identify through industry channels." Within 48 hours, my investigation team had uncovered evidence of planning and preparation that had been far more extensive and systematic than I'd realized. Sarah and David hadn't just been considering changes to our financial arrangements. They'd been implementing a comprehensive plan to eliminate my involvement while retaining access to the assets I'd been managing. Marcus had discovered that Sarah and David had opened new investment accounts with Wellington Asset Management 6 weeks earlier, had transferred $127,000 from our secondary joint account without my knowledge, and had been systematically moving assets out of accounts where I had oversight authority. "Mrs. Brennan, they've been planning this transition for months," Marcus had reported. "The timing and coordination suggest they've been developing this strategy since at least December, possibly longer. They've been very careful to maintain legal compliance while systematically reducing your access and control." Patricia had discovered that Sarah and David had consulted with estate planning attorneys about terminating joint account arrangements and had researched legal strategies for limiting family members' access to financial assets that had been accumulated through collaborative management. "Margaret, they've been researching your legal rights and looking for ways to minimize your ability to object to or interfere with their plans," Patricia had reported. "The legal consultation records suggest they've been treating this as an adversarial situation rather than a family financial discussion." But the most shocking discovery had been Harrison's research into their Wellington asset management arrangements. The new accounts had been structured specifically to exclude me from any oversight or consultation role, despite the fact that a significant portion of the assets being transferred had been accumulated through my management and had included my own retirement contributions. Margaret, they've essentially stolen your financial coordination strategies and are implementing them through Wellington while cutting you out of any decision-making or benefit sharing, Harrison had reported. The account structures they've created mirror the optimization strategies you developed, but they've eliminated your access and authority while maintaining the benefits of your planning. Armed with this information, I'd realized that Sarah and David's financial independence had actually been a coordinated plan to exploit my expertise while eliminating my control, essentially stealing the financial optimization strategies I'd developed while discarding the family member who'd created them. But the final straw, the incident that would transform my hurt and disappointment into cold, calculating determination, had occurred on February 15, 2024, during what would become known in our family history as the subway station incident. I'd been experiencing chest pains and dizziness that afternoon while working in my home office, symptoms that had been concerning enough that I'd called Sarah to ask if she could accompany me to the emergency room for evaluation. At 73, with a family history of heart disease, such symptoms required immediate medical attention, and I'd been nervous about navigating emergency room procedures alone. "Sarah, I'm having some chest discomfort and I'm feeling dizzy," I'd called to tell her. "I think I should go to the hospital to get checked out, but I'm nervous about going alone. Could you possibly meet me there or ride with me?" Sarah's response had been the kind of casual dismissal that had revealed the complete extent of her changed attitude toward me and my well-being. "Mom, David and I have dinner reservations at Le Bernardin tonight with some important clients," Sarah had replied, her tone suggesting that my potential medical emergency was an inconvenient interruption of their social schedule. "Can't you just call an ambulance if you think it's serious, or maybe wait until tomorrow and see your regular doctor?" The suggestion that I should either call an ambulance for what might be a minor issue or ignore potentially serious cardiac symptoms because they had dinner plans had been so callous and selfish that I'd been temporarily speechless. "Sarah, I'm not sure this can wait until tomorrow," I'd said, trying to keep my voice steady despite my shock at her indifference. "Chest pain at my age could be serious. I really think I need medical evaluation tonight." But Sarah had been unmoved by my concerns, offering only the most minimal assistance while making clear that my medical needs were secondary to their social obligations. "Mom, if you really think it's urgent, you could take the subway to Mount Sinai and I'll try to meet you there after dinner if it's not too late," Sarah had said. "But honestly, you're probably just stressed about the financial changes we've been discussing. Maybe you should just rest tonight and see how you feel tomorrow." The casual dismissal of my symptoms as stress-related, combined with the suggestion that I should navigate the subway system alone while experiencing potential cardiac symptoms, had revealed a level of callousness that I'd never imagined possible from my own daughter. But I'd been desperate enough for medical evaluation that I'd agreed to her suggestion, taking the subway from Brooklyn to Manhattan while experiencing ongoing chest discomfort and hoping that Sarah would indeed meet me at the hospital as promised. The subway ride had been frightening and humiliating, as I'd struggled with physical symptoms while surrounded by strangers and worrying about what would happen if my condition worsened while I was alone and far from help. Other passengers had noticed my distress and had offered assistance, demonstrating more concern for my well-being than my own daughter had shown. "Lady, are you okay?" a young man had asked as I'd gripped the subway pole for support during a particularly severe episode of dizziness. "Do you need help getting to a hospital?" The kindness of strangers had been a stark contrast to my daughter's indifference, highlighting just how completely our family relationships had deteriorated. Upon arriving at Mount Sinai emergency room, I'd been evaluated, had received ECG testing and blood work, and had been told that while my symptoms weren't immediately life-threatening, they required follow-up care and monitoring that would necessitate someone being available to assist with transportation and medication management. But when I'd called Sarah to report the medical results and ask about meeting me as planned, her response had been the final revelation that would change everything forever. "Mom, dinner is running late and David's clients are really important for his business development," Sarah had said, her voice carrying annoyance rather than concern about my medical situation. "Since the doctor said you're not having a heart attack, can't you just take the subway home? We probably won't be done here until midnight." The suggestion that I should navigate the subway system alone late at night while recovering from a medical emergency had been so shocking and cruel that I'd been unable to respond immediately. "Sarah, the doctor said I need someone to monitor me tonight and help with medication," I'd said, my voice shaking with a combination of physical weakness and emotional devastation. "I'm dizzy and weak. I really shouldn't be traveling alone." But Sarah had been unmoved by my medical needs, offering only the most grudging and inadequate assistance. "Mom, I really can't leave this dinner," Sarah had said with finality. "You're 73 years old. You should be able to handle taking the subway home. If you're really too weak to travel, maybe you should stay in the hospital overnight." The casual abandonment of a 73-year-old mother at a subway station following a medical emergency had been the ultimate demonstration of selfishness and ingratitude that had revealed the complete breakdown of family loyalty and basic human decency. Standing alone on the subway platform at 11:30 p.m., feeling weak and disoriented while my daughter enjoyed expensive dinner with clients whose business had been built on financial optimization I'd provided, I'd realized that Sarah and David's financial betrayal had been just the beginning of a much deeper betrayal of family values and basic respect. But I'd also realized something else. The 73-year-old woman they'd abandoned at a subway station was someone with 45 years of banking expertise, complete access to all their financial accounts, and detailed knowledge of every aspect of their financial operations that they'd been planning to steal. That night, while Sarah and David had been celebrating their business success with expensive wine and client entertainment, I'd been making phone calls that would restructure their entire financial world in ways they'd never see coming. My first call had been to Harrison Chen, activating banking relationships and professional connections that I'd maintained throughout my retirement. "Harrison, I need to execute some financial transactions first thing tomorrow morning," I'd said from my hospital bed while monitoring equipment had recorded my vital signs. "I'm implementing some family financial restructuring that requires immediate action." My second call had been to Patricia Williams, initiating legal documentation that would protect my actions and ensure that everything I was planning would be completely legal and irreversible. "Patricia, I'm implementing the financial protection strategies we discussed," I'd said. "I need documentation prepared immediately that will formalize my rights and authorities regarding joint account management." My third call had been to Marcus Rodriguez, initiating the final phase of our investigation while also beginning implementation of consequences that would teach Sarah and David exactly what happened when people abandoned family members who controlled their financial security. "Marcus, we're moving to implementation phase," I'd said. "I want documentation of tonight's incident while we execute the financial restructuring we discussed." The next morning, February 16, 2024, while Sarah and David had been sleeping off their celebration of business success and client entertainment, I'd been implementing the most comprehensive financial lesson they would ever receive about the consequences of betraying someone with my expertise and access. At 9 a.m., I'd walked into Manhattan Trust and Savings, where I'd been welcomed by colleagues and former staff who remembered my 45-year career and were eager to assist with whatever financial services I required. "Mrs. Brennan, it's wonderful to see you," the branch manager had said. "How can we help you today?" "I need to restructure some joint account arrangements," I'd replied. "I'll be executing complete withdrawals from several accounts and transferring funds to new individual accounts that I'll be managing independently." The primary joint account, containing $847,000 that represented 3 years of coordinated family financial management, had been my first target. As the primary account holder with full legal authority over all transactions, I'd had complete discretion to restructure the account as I deemed appropriate. I'll be closing this joint account and transferring all funds to a new individual account. Under my sole control, I'd explained to the banker handling my transactions. Please ensure that all related parties are notified of the account closure and fund transfer. The secondary investment account, containing an additional $234,000 in coordinated investment portfolios that I'd been managing, had been next. Again, my legal authority as account coordinator had provided complete discretion over fund management and distribution. The business coordination account that I'd established for David's consulting practice had contained $156,000 in client payments and business reserves that had been accumulated through my cash flow management and optimization strategies. By 11:30 a.m., I'd successfully transferred $1,237,000 from various joint accounts that Sarah and David had been planning to restructure without my consultation, moving all funds to new individual accounts, where they would be protected from any future attempts at manipulation or unauthorized access. The final step had been establishing new investment and management arrangements that would ensure the funds I'd accumulated through my expertise would continue to be optimized while remaining completely outside Sarah and David's access or influence. Mrs. Brennan, these new account arrangements will provide you with complete autonomy over your financial management while maintaining the optimization strategies you've developed, my new private banker had confirmed. The funds will be managed according to your specifications with no external access or oversight. But the financial restructuring had been just the beginning of the consequences Sarah and David would face for their betrayal and abandonment. Bai Fao, February 20th, when Sarah and David had expected to finalize their Wellington asset management arrangements and had discovered that all joint accounts had been closed and funds transferred, their frantic phone calls had begun. "Mom, what happened to our joint accounts?" Sarah had called, her voice carrying panic rather than the entitled dismissal that had characterized our recent conversations. "Wellington is saying that the accounts they were expecting to manage have been closed and the funds have been transferred." "Sarah, I restructured our financial arrangements in accordance with my legal rights as primary account holder," I'd replied calmly from my new penthouse apartment that I'd been able to purchase, immediately with funds that had been accessible through my banking relationships. "Since you and David decided that my financial management expertise was no longer needed, I've implemented independent arrangements that will better serve my interests." David's response had been even more desperate, as he'd realized that his consulting business accounts had also been restructured in ways that had eliminated his access to funds he'd assumed would always be available. "Margaret, you can't just close our business accounts without discussion," David had protested during a frantic phone call. "Those funds are essential for my consulting operations. I have client commitments and business expenses that depend on access to those resources." "David, those accounts were established through my banking expertise and were managed according to my professional standards," I'd replied. "Since you determined that your financial independence was more important than our family collaboration, I've simply implemented arrangements that reflect your stated preferences." The immediate financial impact on Sarah and David had been devastating and comprehensive. Without access to the coordinated investment accounts, they'd lost the cash flow optimization that had been supporting their expensive Manhattan lifestyle. Without the business coordination account, David's consulting practice had faced immediate cash flow problems that had threatened client relationships and business operations. But the longer-term consequences had been even more severe. The investment strategies I'd been implementing had been generating returns that had significantly exceeded market performance, and without my management, their investment results had immediately deteriorated. Within 6 months, Sarah and David's investment losses had exceeded $180,000 compared to what my continued management would have achieved. Their tax liabilities had increased by over $45,000 annually due to loss of the optimization strategies I'd been implementing. Their overall financial position had deteriorated by more than $300,000 in the first year alone. "Mom, we made a terrible mistake," Sarah had admitted during a desperate phone call 6 months after the subway station incident. "We didn't understand the value of what you were providing, and we've paid an enormous price for our ingratitude and selfishness. But the financial consequences had been accompanied by social and professional consequences that had been equally devastating. Their colleagues and clients had noticed the deterioration in their financial management sophistication, and their professional reputations had suffered as their business operations had become less efficient and effective. David's consulting practice had lost 2 major clients who'd been impressed by the financial management capabilities that had actually been provided by my expertise. Sarah's law practice had faced cash flow problems that had affected her ability to take on complex cases and had damaged her reputation among partners who'd expected continued financial sophistication. Margaret, we understand now that we destroyed the best financial arrangement we'll ever have access to, David had written in a letter that had reached me 8 months after the restructuring. We lost not just your financial management, but also your trust and your presence in our lives. We have no explanation for our ingratitude except our own arrogance and stupidity. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence had been the community recognition that my response to their betrayal had demonstrated exactly what happened when people underestimated someone based on age-related assumptions about capability and willingness to fight back. Margaret Brennan has become a legend in Manhattan banking circles. My former colleague Harrison Chen had told me during a dinner celebration 6 months after the incident. People talk about how she turned the tables on family members who tried to exploit her expertise while abandoning her during a medical emergency. You've become an inspiration for seniors who refuse to accept family exploitation. Standing in my new penthouse apartment 18 months after the subway station incident, overlooking Central Park, while reviewing investment statements that showed continued superior performance under my independent management, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with the complete validation of my right to live according to my own values and priorities. I'd fought for my financial independence, my professional dignity, and my right to be treated with respect and appreciation rather than exploitation and abandonment, and I'd won completely. The $1,237,000 that Sarah and David had lost access to had been a small price for teaching them that respect for elderly family members wasn't optional, and that attempting to exploit someone with substantial financial expertise was a recipe for permanent financial disadvantage. Patricia, do you think I was too harsh in my response to Sarah and David's betrayal? I'd asked my attorney during one of our regular check-in conversations. Margaret, you gave them exactly the lesson they needed about the consequences of financial exploitation and family abandonment, Patricia had replied. They tried to steal your expertise while discarding your well-being. You showed them that some people fight back with consequences that last forever. The most meaningful aspect of my victory had been the way it had transformed my understanding of my own power and value. At 75, I was managing investments more successfully, contributing more meaningfully to my community through financial education programs, and living more independently than I had at any previous point in my retirement. The attempt to exploit my expertise while abandoning my well-being had actually catalyzed the most empowering and financially successful period of my entire retirement. If someone in your life is trying to exploit your expertise while treating you with disrespect, based on assumptions about age or family obligations, remember my story. Remember that experience and competence are not diminished by age when you have resources, knowledge, and the determination to fight for your right to be treated with dignity and appreciation. Remember that people who try to steal your contributions while abandoning your well-being might discover they've challenged someone with the capability to ensure they regret their exploitation for the rest of their lives. What's your story? Have you ever had to fight back against family members who tried to exploit your expertise while showing you disrespect and ingratitude? Share it in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more stories about turning your biggest family betrayal into your most empowering victory. Because sometimes the best response to people who abandon you at a subway station is showing them exactly what they lose when they discard someone who controls their financial security. Sarah and David thought they could exploit my expertise while treating me as disposable. What they actually did was lose access to financial management worth over $1 million while learning that some people fight back with consequences that reshape entire family dynamics. Sometimes the people who think you're just a convenient resource are about to discover you're actually someone with the power to restructure their entire financial future. That's a lesson worth $1,137,000. And every dollar was worth it to prove that respect and appreciation aren't negotiable at any age. Justice served. Independence reclaimed. Expertise respected. Victory complete. The view from 75 is spectacular when you're surrounded by people who appreciate your contributions rather than exploit them. Sarah and David learned too late that abandoning someone at a subway station was the most expensive mistake they'd ever made in their lives. Respect your elders, especially when they control your bank accounts. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.